Welcome back to Narrative Network. What would you do if the job you worked so hard for day in and day out was ripped away in an instant? Imagine being a single mother, fighting to support your family, only to have your boss, a wealthy CEO, fire you without a second thought. Sounds heartbreaking, right? But what this woman did next will absolutely leave you speechless. It's a story of resilience, strength, and a twist no one saw coming. Stay tuned, because by the end of this video, you'll see how one fired black mother didn't just survive, she thrived, and ended up changing the game in ways that left everyone, including her former boss, completely stunned. If you enjoy stories of empowerment and overcoming the odds, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for more incredible content. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. In the gleaming skyscraper that overlooked the city, Marcus Whitman sat in his luxurious corner office, his leather chair facing a floor-to-ceiling window that provided a panoramic view of downtown. Whitman was a well-known figure in the business world, a wealthy CEO of a tech company that had taken the industry by storm. His success was widely celebrated, but beneath the polished exterior lay a man who ruled his empire with an iron fist. His decisions were swift and often teed, and his gaze rarely wavered from one thing: profit. For years, Marcus had built his company, Whitman Industries, with a singular focus on growth, often at the expense of the people who worked for him. His motto had always been simple: business comes first. It didn't matter if it meant long hours, layoffs, or sacrificing others' well-being. The company had to succeed. On the other side of the city, there was Sheila Carter, a hardworking single mother of two who had been employed at Whitman Industries for 5 years. Sheila wasn't just another employee. She was an incredibly dedicated administrative assistant who had managed to balance her demanding job with raising her children, Malik and Jada. Sheila's work ethic was unmatched, and she took pride in everything she did. But being one of the few black women in the company often made her feel invisible, like she had to work twice as hard to be noticed, let alone appreciated. Every day, Sheila would wake up before dawn to get her children ready for school before heading to the office. Despite the challenges of being a single mother, Sheila carried herself with grace and resilience. She did her job with a smile, even when things were tough, and never complained about the long hours or the lack of recognition. But all that changed one rainy afternoon. It was an ordinary Tuesday, and Sheila was finishing up a stack of reports in her cubicle when she received a sudden email from Human Resources. The subject line read, "Urgent meeting with Marcus Whitman." Sheila's heart raced as she opened the email, her hands trembling slightly. She had never been called to Marcus Whitman's office before. She quickly gathered her things and made her way to the 32nd floor, the executive level where the atmosphere always felt different. Cold, sterile, and detached. When Sheila stepped into Marcus Whitman's office, she felt the weight of his gaze on her. Marcus sat behind his massive oak desk, his expression impassive. He gestured for her to sit, and she did so, her heart pounding in her chest. "Sheila," Marcus began, his tone brisk and businesslike. "We're restructuring the company, and unfortunately, we're making some tough decisions. As part of this process, we're letting a number of people go. Your position is being eliminated effective immediately." Sheila stared at him, stunned. Her mind was racing. "Eliminated?" she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I've been with the company for 5 years. I work hard. It's not personal," Marcus interrupted, his eyes flicking back to the papers on his bowl. "It's just business." Just business. The words echoed in Sheila's mind as she sat there numb. After all her years of dedication, it all came down to this: a cold, impersonal dismissal with no warning and no acknowledgement of her hard work. Marcus didn't even look at her again as he handed her a severance package and motioned for her to leave. With her hands shaking and her heart heavy, Sheila gathered her belongings and walked out of the building. As she stepped into the pouring rain, a million thoughts swirled in her mind. How would she pay her bills? How would she take care of her children? What would she tell them? But as the tears threatened to fall, something inside Sheila shifted. She wasn't going to let this define her. She wasn't going to be another Black woman cast aside by a company that didn't value her. No, she was going to do something more. That night, Sheila sat at her kitchen table, the severance package still untouched. Her children, Malik and Jada, were asleep in their rooms, unaware of the storm brewing in their mother's heart. She felt a wave of frustration, sadness, and anger rise within her. All the years of hard work, the sacrifices she'd made to provide for her family, and the loyalty she had shown to a company that discarded her without a second thought, it all weighed heavily on her. Sheila glanced at a photo of her children sitting on the shelf nearby, a reminder of why she worked so hard in the first place. They were her world, and she wasn't going to let them down. As she stared at their smiling faces, a sense of determination began to grow. She had lost her job, but she hadn't lost her skills, her experience, or her resolve. Maybe I've been thinking too small, Sheila thought to herself. Maybe this is the universe telling me it's time to do something bigger, something for myself. For years, Sheila had dreamed of starting her own business. She had always been passionate about the idea of creating something that would empower women, particularly women of color, who faced so many challenges in the corporate world. But that dream had always seemed too far out of reach. Until now. I don't need Marcus Whitman, Sheila muttered under her breath, standing up and pacing the kitchen. I don't need that job. I can create something of my own. With that thought in mind, Sheila grabbed a notebook and started writing. The hours flew by as she scribbled down ideas for a business that would focus on helping women, especially Black women, navigate the corporate world, build their careers, and find success on their own terms. She had experienced firsthand the struggles of being undervalued and overlooked, and now she wanted to help others overcome those same obstacles. By the time the sun rose the next morning, Sheila had a plan. She wasn't just going to start a business, she was going to start a movement. In the weeks that followed, Sheila threw herself into building her business. She researched tirelessly, learning everything she could about entrepreneurship, networking, and funding. She reached out to friends, former colleagues, and local community leaders, explaining her vision and asking for their support. And slowly, but surely, the pieces began to come together. Sheila's idea was simple yet powerful. Her business, which she named Empower Her Consulting, would provide career coaching, mentorship, and resources to help women, particularly women of color, succeed in the workplace. It would be a space where women could come together to share their experiences, support one another, and learn how to navigate the often hostile terrain of corporate America. As Sheila worked to launch her business, she began to notice something remarkable. People were listening. Former colleagues, who had once been just as overlooked and undervalued as she had been, were reaching out to offer their help. Local organizations and nonprofits wanted to partner with her to provide services to underrepresented women in the workforce. Within months, Empower Her Consulting was up and running. Sheila began offering workshops, webinars, and one-on-one coaching sessions for women looking to advance their careers. Her clients ranged from young professionals just starting out to seasoned executives who were looking to break through the glass ceiling. Sheila's message resonated with them all. You don't have to accept being undervalued. You can take control of your own success. Empower Her Consulting quickly gained traction. Word spread about Sheila's work, and soon she was being invited to speak at conferences, participate in panels, and contribute to articles on career development for women of color. What had once been a small, uncertain dream was now a growing movement. But while Sheila's success was growing, Marcus Whitman remained unaware of the storm that was building. About a year after being fired from Whitman Industries, Sheila was invited to speak at a high-profile diversity and inclusion conference in the city. The event was aimed at bringing together leaders from across industries to discuss how to create more equitable workplaces for marginalized groups, particularly women and people of color. As Sheila prepared for her keynote speech, she couldn't help but reflect on how far she had come. Just a year ago, she had been sitting in Marcus Whitman's office, feeling small and defeated. But now, she was standing tall, having built something from the ground up, something that was changing lives. When the day of the conference arrived, Sheila took the stage with confidence, her heart pounding with anticipation. The audience was filled with CEOs, executives, and HR leaders from some of the biggest companies in the country. As she looked out at the crowd, she spotted a familiar face: Marcus Whitman. There he was, sitting near the front, his expression unreadable as he glanced up at the stage. Sheila felt a surge of emotion, but she pushed it aside. This wasn't about him. This was about her and the women she was fighting for. Sheila began her speech, sharing her personal story of being undervalued and dismissed, and how that experience had led her to start Empower Her Consulting. She spoke about the systemic barriers that women of color face in the workplace and the importance of creating spaces where they can thrive. As she spoke, the room grew quieter, the audience hanging on her every word. Sheila's passion and authenticity shone through, and it was clear that her message was resonating deeply with everyone in the room. At the end of her speech, the audience erupted into applause, a standing ovation that left Sheila momentarily overwhelmed. As she stepped off the stage, several attendees rushed to congratulate her, praising her for her work and asking how they could get involved. But it wasn't the applause or the praise that left Sheila feeling stunned. It was Marcus Whitman. After the crowd had dispersed, Marcus approached her, his expression uncharacteristically serious. "Sheila," he began, his voice unusually subdued. I didn't know what you were capable of." Sheila raised an eyebrow, surprised by his words. "Didn't know? Or didn't care?" she asked, her tone calm but pointed. Marcus hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. I made a mistake," he admitted. "Firing you was short-sighted. I see that now. You've built something incredible, something that's making a real difference." Sheila looked at him, her gaze steady. "It's not just about me, Marcus. It's about all the women who've been told they're not good enough, who've been dismissed and undervalued, just like I was. I wasn't going to let you, or anyone else, define my worth." For the first time in their relationship, Marcus seemed genuinely humbled. "I want to support what you're doing," he said, his voice softening. "I want to help." Sheila stared at him for a moment, her emotions swirling. This was the man who had cast her aside without a second thought. And now, here he was, asking to be a part of the very movement he had inadvertently fueled. Sheila took a deep breath. "I appreciate the offer," she said finally. "But Empower Her Consulting isn't just a business. It's a community. If you really want to help, you can start by making changes in your own company. Lift up the voices of women who've been silenced. Advocate for diversity and inclusion, not just because it looks good, but because it's the right thing to do." Marcus nodded slowly, absorbing her words. "I will," he promised. "Thank you, Sheila, for everything." As the months passed, Empower Her Consulting continued to grow, expanding into new cities and reaching even more women across the country. Sheila's vision had turned into a movement, one that was reshaping the way companies approached diversity, equity, and inclusion. Her work wasn't just changing lives, it was changing the very fabric of corporate culture. Meanwhile, Marcus Whitman made good on his promise. Whitman Industries began implementing new policies aimed at creating a more inclusive and supportive environment for women and minorities. It wasn't a perfect solution, and there was still much work to be done, but it was a start. And in some small way, it was a testament to the impact that Sheila's resilience had made. For Sheila, the journey was far from over. There were still challenges ahead, still battles to be fought. But as she stood at the helm of Empower Her Consulting, surrounded by a community of strong, determined women, she knew one thing for sure. She had taken what was meant to break her and turned it into her greatest strength. And that, more than anything, left everyone stunned. As Empower Her Consulting expanded, Sheila's influence grew far beyond the walls of corporate boardrooms. Her story began to spread across media outlets, social networks, and community spaces, inspiring countless women, particularly Black women and other women of color, to take control of their careers and lives. Articles were written about her journey from a fired employee to a successful entrepreneur and advocate. And soon Sheila was being invited to participate in television interviews, podcasts, and panel discussions on leadership, diversity, and empowerment. The women who had attended her workshops and seminars began sharing their success stories. One by one, they reached out to tell Sheila how her coaching had helped them negotiate better salaries, win promotions, or even break free from toxic work environments to start their own businesses. Empower Her was no longer just a consulting firm. It had become a symbol of hope, a beacon of change for women who had once felt silenced or overlooked. Sheila found herself standing at the forefront of a movement she never could have imagined. Empower Her became a nationally recognized brand, partnering with large companies to develop diversity and inclusion programs that went beyond lip service. Major corporations sought out Sheila's advice on how to create real change within their organizations, how to recruit and retain diverse talent, and how to build cultures of belonging. It wasn't easy work. Sheila faced pushback from some corporate leaders who saw diversity as a box to check rather than an investment in their workforce. But she remained steadfast in her mission, and slowly, change began to take root. Empower Her was helping companies rethink their practices while also providing the tools for individual women to succeed on their own terms. In the midst of all this, Sheila continued to mentor the women who had been with her from the beginning, those who had faced their own battles, much like hers. She watched them rise, confident and empowered, and it filled her with pride. What had started as a personal journey of resilience had become a collective force of empowerment. But with success came new challenges. As Empower Her grew, Sheila found herself facing an internal struggle. She had always been deeply involved in every aspect of the company, from leading workshops to building partnerships. But as the business expanded, she realized that she couldn't do it all on her own. She needed to step back from the day-to-day operations and focus on leading Empower Her as its CEO. It was a difficult decision. Empower Her was her heart and soul, and letting go of the reins, even a little, felt terrifying. But Sheila knew that if she wanted the movement to continue growing and reaching more women, she would need to trust others to carry out her vision. Sheila decided to bring in a leadership team, strong, capable women who shared her passion and understood the mission of Empower Her. Together, they began to strategize new ways to scale the business, expand into new markets, and create even more opportunities for women across the country. With the new leadership team in place, Empower Her began offering online courses, reaching women in cities and towns where access to professional development resources was limited. The company also launched a scholarship program for women pursuing careers in underrepresented fields like STEM, law, and finance, providing them with mentorship and financial support. But amidst all this growth, Sheila remained focused on the core of her mission, helping women recognize their own value and navigate the complexities of the corporate world with confidence. One day, Sheila received a call that brought her journey full circle. Whitman Industries, the very company that had fired her years ago, was facing a crisis. A group of employees had come forward with complaints of discrimination, harassment, and a toxic work environment, and the company was under scrutiny for its failure to address these issues. Marcus Whitman, the CEO who had once dismissed Sheila without a second thought, now found himself in need of help. And so, in a twist of fate, he reached out to Empower Her Consulting. When Sheila received the request for a consultation, she couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. Part of her wanted to reject the offer outright, to remind Marcus of how he had treated her and how little he had cared about diversity and inclusion back then. But another part of her, perhaps the part that had learned from years of struggle and growth, knew that this was an opportunity for real change, not just for herself, but for the company and its employees. After careful consideration, Sheila agreed to meet with Marcus. They sat across from each other in a sleek conference room at Whitman Industries, a stark contrast to the small cubicle where Sheila had once worked. Marcus seemed different now, humbled, perhaps, by the gravity of the situation his company was in. "Sheila," Marcus began, his voice more measured than before. "I know I don't deserve your help, but I need it. Whitman Industries is in trouble, and I want to make things right. I want to create a company that values diversity, that's inclusive for everyone." Sheila listened carefully, her expression thoughtful. "You fired me without even acknowledging the work I'd done," she said calmly. "You didn't see my value then. Why should I believe that you're ready to make real changes now?" Marcus sighed, leaning forward slightly. "I've made mistakes. I know that. But I've seen what you've built with Empower Her. You've created something incredible, something that's changing the lives of so many people. I need your expertise. Whitman Industries needs it." Sheila looked at him for a long moment before responding. "If I agree to help, it's going to be on my terms. You're going to have to commit to more than just surface-level changes. Real diversity and inclusion require a cultural shift, and that takes time and effort. You have to be willing to do the hard work, not just talk about it." Marcus nodded, a flicker of hope in his eyes. "I understand, and I'm ready." Over the next several months, Sheila and her team at Empower Her Consulting worked closely with Whitman Industries to overhaul the company's policies and practices. They implemented mandatory diversity and inclusion training for all employees, revamped the hiring and promotion processes to ensure equal opportunities for underrepresented groups, and established clear protocols for addressing discrimination and harassment in the workplace. But the changes didn't stop there. Sheila insisted on creating a leadership pipeline for women and people of color within the company, providing mentorship and development opportunities to ensure that the next generation of leaders would be diverse and reflective of the broader community. Through it all, Sheila remained steadfast in her belief that true change required more than just policy adjustments. It required a shift in mindset, a commitment to valuing all employees, regardless of their race, gender, or background. And slowly but surely, Whitman Industries began to transform. Marcus, for his part, showed a genuine willingness to learn and grow. He attended every training session, participated in open discussions with his employees, and actively sought out feedback on how to improve the company's culture. He wasn't perfect, but he was trying, and that mattered. Sheila knew that change wouldn't happen overnight, but seeing the progress being made gave her hope. This was the kind of impact she had always dreamed of making, one that went beyond her own experience and created lasting change for others. With Whitman Industries on the path to becoming a more inclusive company, Sheila turned her focus back to Empower Her Consulting. The success of the company had exceeded even her wildest expectations, and now she had her sights set on expanding the movement even further. Empower Her began partnering with schools, community centers, and nonprofit organizations to provide mentorship and career development resources to young girls, particularly those from marginalized backgrounds. Sheila wanted to reach them early, to show them that they could achieve anything they set their minds to, regardless of the obstacles they faced. Empower Her also launched an annual conference called the Empower Summit, where women from all walks of life could come together to share their stories, learn from one another, and build connections. The event quickly became a powerful gathering of women leaders, entrepreneurs, and changemakers, all united by a shared mission to uplift and empower one another. As the movement grew, Sheila never forgot the journey that had brought her here. She remembered the day she had been fired from Whitman Industries, the tears she had shed in the rain, and the decision she had made to rise above it all. That moment of loss had been the catalyst for everything that followed, and in the end, it had become her greatest source of strength. Years later, Sheila stood on the stage of the Empower Summit, looking out at a sea of women who had come to hear her speak. The crowd was filled with faces of every color and background, all of them united by a shared sense of purpose and determination. Sheila smiled as she began her speech. I started Empower Her because I knew that we could no longer wait for someone else to value us, to recognize our worth. I learned that we have to value ourselves first, to take control of our own destinies. And I'm here today to tell you that no matter where you come from, no matter what challenges you face, you have the power to create your own path. The audience erupted into applause, and Sheila felt a wave of pride and gratitude wash over her. She had built something far bigger than herself, a movement that would continue long after she was gone. As she stepped off the stage, a young woman approached her, her eyes filled with admiration. "You're the reason I started my own business," the woman said softly. "I watched your journey, and it made me believe that I could do it too." Sheila smiled, her heart swelling with emotion. "That's what it's all about," she replied, "lifting each other up so we can all rise." As Sheila walked away, she knew that her legacy would be one of empowerment, resilience, and hope, a legacy that would continue to inspire generations of women to come. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe for more exciting content. Share this video with your friends